A new administration promises a seismic shift at America's doorstep as new Trump policies take aim at the southern border. With promises of tighter security and sweeping immigration reforms, what will this mean for families seeking a new life? Critics warn of a humanitarian crisis, while supporters hail a new era of safety and sovereignty. Let's get into the issue right now in this Border Watch special for Fox Local. Well, hello, I'm Anthony Antoine. Thank you so much for joining us. Alongside me here is political reporter Greg Rugen from right here at Fox 26 in Houston. We also have Stephen Dow from Dallas and Rudy Koski from our sister station in Austin as well. And then reporter Jonathan Mejia at the border for us in Eagle Pass. Greg, lots to talk about here today. 45 is now 47.
Absolutely. And today, in his inaugural address, Donald Trump said that the border was the critical issue that allowed him to gain this presidency. Even a bigger issue than inflation.
Right. And, you know, we're going to be talking about that border watch specifically here because we are expecting President Trump to sign more than 200 executive orders here before it's all said and done. And Fox News' Bill Malugin credits a source here saying that President Trump will sign 11 border-related executive orders here today alone. Let's talk about 3 of them to start. Here we go. One of these executive orders will direct DHS and the Department of Defense to finish construction of the border wall and also deploy personnel to take operational control of the border. He will also order the immediate termination of now former President Joe Biden's controversial mass humanitarian parole policies and programs, including the CBP-1 cell phone app and the CHNV migrant flights program. Now, we'll get back to that app because we had some major breaking news on that front as well, so stay tuned for that. But the president now, Donald Trump, will order catch and release policies to be ended. Trump will also direct DHS and the AG to reinstate the Remain in Mexico program.
In order number 2, Trump will order U.S. troops to be deployed to the border under U.S. Northern Command and will order the U.S. military to prioritize U.S. borders and territorial integrity in strategic planning for its operations. Trump will direct his Secretary of Defense to develop a unified command plan, and the border security mission will be handled by NORTHCOM.
And in order 3, Trump will designate international cartels and crime organizations like Tren de Aragua, which we've seen here in the Houston area, and MS-13 as foreign terrorist organizations and specially designated global terrorists. Now, that will allow for targeted action against members of those gangs, including sanctions and financial penalties as well. So now, let's hear from President Trump and his newly appointed border czar, Tom Homan.
I will act with historic speed and strength and fix every single crisis facing our country. We have to do it. Think of it, open borders, prisons and mental institutions, men playing in women's sports, transgender for everyone. Transgender. And very soon we'll begin the largest deportation operation in American history.
President Trump has made it clear. We will prioritize public safety threats and national security threats first. And that's what the focus will be. And there's over 1.5 convicted criminal aliens in this country with final orders removal that we're going to be looking for. There's thousands of gang members, illegal alien gang members we're going to be looking for. Now, I'm going to say, if you're in the country illegally, you shouldn't feel comfortable. Absolutely not. I won't feel comfortable if I'm in the country illegally. If I'm in some other country illegally, I'm not going to be comfortable. You shouldn't be comfortable either, because when you enter this country illegally, you have committed a crime. You are a criminal, and you're not off the table. Criminals and gang members get no grace period. But while we're out prioritizing the public safety threats and national security threats, if you want to self-deport, you should self-deport. Because, again, we know who you are, and we're going to come and find you. So if you want to self-deport, that's fine. But criminals and gang members, they get no favors from this administration. But for those others, the non-criminals, if you want to self-deport, I'm all for it. Because when they self-report, they can put their orders, put everything in order, their family business, if they got homes or whatever, they can put all that in order and leave with their family altogether. It makes perfect sense for the ones that are not criminals or not priorities.
Decisive words there from the former Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director, Tom Homan. Let's head now down to Eagle Pass with our Jonathan Mejia. Now, Jonathan's been down to the border there, covering several stories for us. And Jonathan, it is day 1 here, this new administration. Lots to talk about. Good afternoon.
That's right, Anthony. Lots of things going around across the country as President Donald Trump officially takes office. The same could be said here at the southern border. Right now, I am in Eagle Pass. The other side of me, Piedras Negras, Mexico. So we know that lots of things are happening down here at the border, and more changes we'll be seeing in the next couple of days. But a month ago, I took the trip down to the Rio Grande Valley border sector to see how things were playing out in that border sector a month from today. It was an early morning wake-up call for Border Patrol agents in the Rio Grande Valley sector. Our ride-along began at 5 a.m. There was a time when the RGV was the busiest sector when it came to migrant apprehensions, but it has since dropped significantly, putting the sector at the bottom. How have things been like the last couple of months with irregular crossings?
I would say that it's picked up a little bit. Historically, the Rio Grande Valley sector has been #1 in apprehensions. Included in those apprehensions, what we see a lot in this area is a lot of family units. What is a family unit? Migrants that consist of like mother, father, and children, or just mother and children, or father and children. We also see a lot of unaccompanied minors, juveniles. But currently we're #5, right? So there has been a decrease.
The ride-along continued as we drove for hours listening closely to the radio. But still, no apprehensions.
There's different trends at different times. Everything we have to remember that nobody crosses this border, nobody crosses the Rio Grande without paying. Who they pay? The cartel. It's a business. They see those migrants as a dollar sign. So all the crossings, all immigration, that referring to that is cartel based and cartel organized. They're the ones who decide where these migrants will be crossing, their crossing points.
According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, fiscal year to date, there have been more than 56,500 encounters. A little over 5,000 encounters have come from the RGV. That's an 84% decrease compared to the previous year, where the sector saw more than 32,000 encounters. Our ride-along continued with the riverine crew.
You'll see that we'll have some scouts set up on the Mexican riverbank. Oftentimes they'll either drop off people or they'll use drones. And it's more of like a check-in system. They'll count how many vessels are on the water, and they know more or less how long it takes our boats to get from point A to point B, so they'll throw traffic either ahead of us or right after we just pass a certain area, but it's a very sophisticated network.
Although the morning was slow, things quickly took a turn.
Coming up.
Agents were alerted of a group that had illegally crossed and dispersed. However, agents had their eyes on one person.
But did you have a visual of the runners?
What I'm looking for is an anomaly there to see if something stands out that I could say, hey, because apparently he crossed the pond that you can see. As we come across, there's the pond that goes in there.
Agents believe the person was a guide that was trying to make their way back to Mexico. Agents say it was evident by the way scouts on the Mexican riverbank watched our every move.
Man, that was a remarkable piece of reporting there, Jonathan. Thank you. Really gives us an insight, right, into what they're dealing with down there on the border. Jonathan, quick question for you. Let's talk about some of those executive actions here today and what that would mean there for the men and women on the border themselves patrolling.
Yeah, that's right. As you guys were mentioning at the top of this show, several executive orders were signed. 10 were signed related to the border, and we detailed 3 of those for you. So when we talk about what we can see here at the border, we're listening and watching out for more military personnel coming here to the border, providing federal agents more manpower and resources. While being on that ride along, I saw how they worked in collaboration with the state when we talked about Texas DPS state troopers, also the Texas National Guard, and now they'll be having more help with the U.S. military making their way to border towns.
All right, Jonathan, we'll get back to you here with more. But Greg, we have much more to talk about now.
Yeah, absolutely. Time after time, now President Donald Trump promised mass deportation on the campaign trail. He made the same pledge today, pledging to deport millions.
They talk about mass deportations, but right now there's not the infrastructure to be able to arrest anyone or to get individuals and groups in mass to be taken out of the country. But there's a lot of individuals in the United States that already have orders of deportation. They haven't left. There's a lot of criminals that have been, while they're detained, they have had their hearings and they already have orders of deportation. There's many of those criminals that we cannot deport because their home country does not want to accept them. At this time, I believe that those are going to be deported by force. And all of those are going to be the primary ones. And Homan has also said that with more probability, those are going to be the first ones.
The worst case scenario would be, a deportation, a mass deportation, or a deportation, even if it's not mass, even if it's targeted raids. We know that in the past, even though there have been targeted raids, there has been collateral damage of people who take, for example, ICE may be looking for me, and I live in an apartment complex, but I haven't lived in this apartment for 3 or 4 years, and now the next person that comes along could be picked up even though they don't have a warrant. So the Trump administration and the new ICE director has said that that's going to happen, and that's something that we need to prepare our community for.
If you enroll the Army of the United States to help out, which he has said he's going to do, and they can go to the border, but they cannot touch anybody, they cannot arrest anybody, they can be there and transport illegals and help with processes, but they cannot really interact with them unless it's time of war. So that can help for the illegal entries, and then everybody that wants to apply for asylum will have to do it for a right channel, which was what the Biden administration was trying to do with all the programs that they created. I'm imagining all those programs are going to be canceled as well. And the return to Mexico and wait in Mexico for your time to apply for asylum in the United States is going to return.
All right, my friend Rudy Koski, talk, particularly political talk, is cheap unless it's backed by actions. And we've heard estimates of $12,000, $14,000, $16,000 per immigrant deported. Can Donald Trump do what he has promised?
I think he's going to run into a big wall, and that big wall is going to be all the immigration advocates that are in Texas and throughout the country that will be filing lawsuits. I anticipate as early as tomorrow morning the first lawsuits will be filed. There will be lawsuits in regards to the deportations. There will be lawsuits filed in regards to the border wall. I think that this battle with the border is not going to be moving into the courtroom before we actually get to the border itself. Big questions also in regards to the role of the United States military. How will they how will those units play out? And will there be court actions in regards to a deployment with our military forces along that side? So right now, what I'm looking to see what will happen right after these executive orders are signed is that how fast are we going to get into a courtroom with a lawsuit filed?
All right, my friend Stephen Dial, question for you. Look, we're talking about millions of deportations, but we're also talking about a good chunk of the American employed sector. When do you think it will hit the Trump administration that you can't get a house built, you can't get a road paved, you can't get a lot of stuff done without the help of folks who are undocumented?
Well, I think the Trump administration is first going with the shock and awe, right? Of, we might see raids starting tomorrow. And the priority for President Trump and his team they've kind of fine-tuned their statements in reference to mass deportation, specifically focusing on the criminal element. And I don't think anyone is against criminals being deported. It's a matter of how many criminals, so that they can show that they've deported hundreds of thousands, millions, whatever number they're able to get. That's what I'm calling shock and awe. And then I think we may start to see this conversation kind of dwindle and focus on other aspects of the border, because it's going to be hard, as you mentioned, to do mass deportations of just every single person who is in the country illegally, who are a big part of the United States workforce. They are working in jobs and roles that, some people that are American citizens would not like to work in, let's be completely honest. And so that's going to impact construction sites. It's going to impact agriculture when it comes to farmers. And so there's a wide range of impact that mass deportations can have. And so I think the shock and awe will be whatever these first roundups are. And then I think we'll start hearing mass deportations a little less, in my opinion.
Yeah, and a really focal point of the mass deportations also has to start with the detention centers. And I had a chance to speak to a lawyer about what that could potentially look like. And let's listen into this soundbite here and let's discuss on the other side.
The general rule is if people are detained within a certain distance from the border, they're not subject to sort of all those constitutional rights they might have in the interior. And I suspect what will happen is that they will detain people right at the border and put them into these camps near Eagles Pass and other places. These people are in the United States, and they can perhaps seek relief from the courts, and they probably will if they want to challenge the conditions of their confinement. The bigger question beyond the detention is removal. A lot of people come here have various asylum claims, and there's statutes that govern asylum, there are treaties governing asylum as they fear persecution in their home country. And it will be unclear how much process, how many court hearings are given before they're removed, even removed quickly. So the detention camps, a lot will sort of be the devil in the details, how it's put together. But I think much will turn on how quickly they're not just detained, but also removed.
All right, Rudy Koski, I had a colleague call this the Private Prison Full Employment Act. Do you think that's going to be a boom business if the deportation promises are kept by this administration?
They got to go somewhere, and we've already heard early on with the border sheriffs, they don't have a lot of space. If anybody who's traveled down to South Texas, the sheriff's departments are traditionally not very large. They're very small facilities that they have, and they're already, in some cases, already overcrowded. So where are you going to put them? Well, the state has offered land that it recently acquired down along the border, and offering that to the federal authorities to build one large mass deportation center. But yeah, sure. I think a lot of these private prisons may have to come into play. We have a private prison up in the Bartlett area, just northeast of Austin, that's been shuttered for a very, very long time, starting to come back online. So yeah, some of these private prisons that have been empty could play a role. But also, it starts getting, again, to this question of due process, Greg, and saying you're going to do mass deportation is one thing. Doing it is something different.
Stephen, real quick question for you. You stay in close contact with Democrats in the Dallas area congressional delegation. Are you sensing any impetus, any move towards outreach for congressional reform of our immigration system, something that hasn't happened since Ronald Reagan?
Right, it's that political football that has lasted for decades. And it's interesting, you mentioned Ronald Reagan because today was the first time since Ronald Reagan's inauguration that it was indoors. But in regards to the border and making any progress, it'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks if Democrats have a change in tone. During the campaign trail, they supported a bipartisan bill and continue to say that they would support a bipartisan bill. Now, if that same language bill comes up, I highly doubt it, but it'll be interesting to see what legislation is proposed beyond these executive orders and beyond the flash in the pan, the controversial things like birthright citizenship, ending that, and things that may require an amendment to the Constitution. So we'll have to see if Democrats have an appetite for it.
All right. And now when we're talking about asylum seekers and the rights they have, we also spoke to an attorney, and it's interesting what he has to say about this. So let's listen in.
The Immigration and Nationality Act says that anybody that comes to through one of our borders, even if illegally, or through a port of entry, they can apply for asylum in the United States. We do not know how the Trump administration may want to limit this somehow. By what he said, he's going to claim that there's a national emergency at the border, and maybe those that are entering illegally may not be allowed to apply for asylum at this time.
And with that in mind, let's go back out to our Jonathan Mejia, who's down there in Eagle Pass at the border. And Jonathan, you took a close look at the CBP One app. It was put in place for people trying to gain citizenship the right way, if you will. But now Trump plans to get rid of that. What can you tell us about that breaking news?
Yeah, that's the talk of the town right now, because that CBP One mobile application was a way for migrants to let the U.S. government know, hey, I want to present myself to the border. I want to present my claim of asylum, and they were able to do it in an orderly fashion. That's why the former President Biden administration put that application in place, was for it to have an orderly flow. Now, today, that no longer exists. But like I said, I was in RGV about a month ago, and we got to speak with people who did get into the country just in time.
Fue una travesía realmente, no quisiera decir difícil, pero sí es algo complicado, ¿okay? Atravesar la selva de Venezuela a México fueron aproximadamente 21 días.
Joana Paredes is a Venezuelan native. She decided to leave her country due to political and economic instability. She says making her way through the Darien Gap was complicated. It took her about 3 weeks to make it to Mexico from Venezuela.
6 meses.
6 meses esperando.
6 meses esperando que saliera la cita, correcto. ¿Cómo fue todo eso? Pues fue un proceso un tanto, digamos que de altos y bajos. Se llega buscando trabajo. Estuve trabajando en el área de cocina, en tiendas de ropa, limpiando casas, cualquier cosa.
She spent 6 months in Mexico waiting for her CBP One appointment. Johanna says there was highs and lows. She worked wherever she could find a job, in the kitchen, in clothing stores, cleaning houses, wherever.
Era complicado porque todos los días el proceso es pedir la cita.
It's a complicated process because you have to sign up for an appointment on a daily basis. You log into the app and fill out the forms. You then have to wait 24 hours to find out if your appointment was confirmed or not. So if I fill out the application today, I wouldn't know if it was approved until the next day. You log on the next day and you check your email or the app. And if you didn't get confirmed, it's doing the process all over again.
The CBP One app is a mobile application where migrants can let the U.S. government know they plan to arrive at a port of entry. It's a process the Biden administration started to have an orderly flow for migrants seeking asylum.
Advance, Spanish, seguir, aceptar.
But those appointments are limited to approximately 1,500 migrants a day. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, since the appointment scheduling function and CBP One was introduced in January of 2023, more than 904,500 people have successfully scheduled appointments to present themselves at ports of entry. All of those individuals were admitted into the country.
Estoy bien. Y yo llego aquí también.
Feliz de poder conseguir la cita.
Sí.
¿Cuánto tiempo se duró para conseguir la cita?
Un año.
Un año.
Sí.
Esperando en México.
Sí.
Wow, ¿cómo fue todo ese proceso?
Bueno, yo más o menos, yo estoy bien. Sí. Y por la situación de mi país, pero aquí en México estoy bien.
Like this Haitian migrant, his journey started in Chile. He made it to Mexico, where he spent a year waiting to get an appointment confirmation. He says with how things are in Haiti, it was worth going through everything he did to enter the country legally through the app. As for Joanna,
Yo vengo en ese sentido de hacer una mejor vida, ¿me entiendes? Vengo a trabajar, a pagar mis impuestos, a pedir lo que Estados Unidos pida.
Joanna successfully was able to enter the country legally and has begun her new life in Kentucky. She says she wants to do things the right way. She wants to work and pay taxes and do whatever the country asks of her.
And you know, Jonathan, talk about that app a little bit more here, because as of today here, that app is no longer working.
That's right, Anthony. thousands are in limbo because if you wanted to present your asylum claims in the United States, you do so through the application. You have to fill it out, as you heard from Johanna Paredes there. It's a rigorous process because you have to sign in on a daily to try to get an appointment. Remember, there's only 1,400 appointments given on a day. So when we talk about the thousands of migrants trying to get on the application, you have to continuously try and try again. So we know that now that no longer exists, and we're seeing the videos from migrants on the other side of the border, the Mexican side, just crying because their appointments that were confirmed for today are no longer valid. And it is important to remember that migrants had the opportunity to present themselves at one of the 8 ports of entry along the southern border here in Texas.
Quickly, Jonathan, you have had the opportunity to speak one-on-one with dozens of migrants. Are they afraid of gaining entry into the United States only to be deported by a Trump administration?
That's the talk of what we're hearing, Greg. There's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to President Trump's administration because we're hearing a lot of things will change and be done at the border. But when it's all said and done, migrants are saying they're going to find one way or the other to make it to this country.
Welcome back. The newly sworn president has also pledged to eliminate birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented residents born here.
Yeah, and that's something that's never been done before, and you can expect some legal pushback.
He's arguing that the children of illegal aliens are not themselves birthright citizens. Or he might argue that the children of people who are invading the United States, this is a new argument, are not citizens. And what this would probably look like is that Trump would instruct his administration to, for example, deny citizenship documents to people born here to illegal aliens or to children born of those who are so-called invading the United States. And this would then go to the courts. I'm skeptical the court would agree with Trump on this, but it still lets him try to test out the issue and to perhaps see if the court's willing to entertain it. Keep in mind that if you actually were to hold that the children of illegal aliens are not citizens, that would go way far back and potentially would denaturalize a lot of people. And also a lot of people who think their parents were citizens maybe didn't have parent citizens, and they too might be denaturalized. So they can be a pretty sweeping argument.
Eventually, with the Civil Rights Movement and the 14th Amendment, this was changed to say that anybody that was born in the United States, to those subject to the United States jurisdiction are U.S. citizens. It has always been interpreted that if you're born here, you are a U.S. citizen. There's some exceptions by the Immigration and Nationality Act for some if you're an employee of like an embassy or something and you have a child in the country, that child remains a citizen of your home country and not the United States. But in this case, it has always been interpreted it's your birthright to be a citizen. But he will challenge this, and this will go to the Supreme Court to make a determination if illegal aliens are considered under the jurisdiction of the United States. And that's a question that is not really answered or clear anywhere.
President Trump cannot undo birthright citizenship through executive action because it would really mean that we would definitely challenge it in court because it would be him trying to change the U.S. Constitution. So it would have to be a long process. Now, we are not being given the current political climate, we're not being naive and saying that it could never happen, but it could take a lot longer for that to happen, or there would be a lot more steps to clear.
He could do it on day number 1. He could say, going forward, we will not provide any benefits to the children of illegal aliens because they're not really citizens. And that can be challenged immediately. That can get to the Supreme Court in a year or so. So this can be settled, I think, pretty quickly. This would not take years, maybe a year or so.
All right, Rudy Koski, campaign trail hyperbole one thing, changing the Constitution another, correct?
I don't know if it's actually changing the Constitution, Greg. You know, it's how you interpret the Constitution. And it gets back to what we talked about in the previous segment in regards to amnesty. How do you, the definition, what is the definition of that? How can you claim that? Who can claim that? That's been a moving target with amnesty. It's been a moving target somewhat in regards to birthright. And I agree that this may eventually go to the Supreme Court in regards to how this is going to be defined. I don't think the founding fathers originally envisioned the way that birthright and anchor babies, if you want to call them that, how that's being applied right now. And this is going to be an interesting court battle. One of the court battles that I talked about right off the get-go.
All right, Rudy, thank you. And then what does this mean? Because it seems to be like it's a very coordinated effort here, because if you end birthright citizenships, then you have mixed families of mixed status. These are things that are going to be, difficult for families here and asylum seekers. What do you think this will mean here moving forward for the governor, Governor Greg Abbott, and the role Texas could potentially play in some of these legal battles, even if that means financially?
I think that a lot of these battles, Texas will be ground zero for these battles, and I think that Greg Abbott will be in lockstep with the president. He certainly was right after the inauguration, when the president basically stopped everything, shifted, and noticed Governor Greg Abbott setting off to the side and had this long conversation about the border with him, unscripted. So I believe Governor Abbott will be in lockstep with the president with whatever policy he's going to be rolling out.
All right, Stephen, is there a fundamental fairness issue here? I mean, even the suggestion of retroactively rescinding citizenship for folks who, are so-called anchor babies.
Yeah, I mean, we got to take a step back here. None of this is going to happen overnight, right? And it's going to be challenged in the courts. It's a matter of what that first message is from now President Trump in regards to this. Yes, he's promised it. He said it's going to happen. Legal scholarship said you'll have to make an amendment to the Constitution. What is the first words that he's going to say on this? And that'll set off a chain reaction of what we hope to see or will see in the future. And so, yes, it's a big topic right now, and an important topic that will definitely, I mean, Rudy mentioned ground zero here in Texas of all states. But I think we need to take a step back and just wait to see what verbiage the president uses. He didn't say it in his inaugural address, and see what happens from there.
All right, Stephen, thank you so much. All right, now let's talk about dreamers.
All right, the inauguration of Donald Trump ushers in a new era of uncertainty for the millions of folks known as dreamers. People brought to this country as children without documentation and allowed to remain under the program known as DACA.
And this is an issue that has gone back and forth now for a very long time, since it was instated under the Obama administration. But now let's get some feedback on what this can mean now moving forward under a new Trump administration.
If, let's just say, one person in a family has DACA and the other person's a citizen, and DACA is rescinded, then there's a deportation. I mean, there are ways for people to seek citizenship for their family members, but in most cases, if they could do that, they would have done that instead of relying on DACA. Trump has been pretty actually favorable to DACA. He says he doesn't want to get rid of it. And I think at this point, you really don't have new people signing up for it. It's just sort of a group of people who've had it for many years. I mean, they're not kids anymore now. They're in their 30s or 40s by this point.
As you know, a federal judge found that the program was illegal. So it's been appealed. Right now it's before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and eventually the final decision will be made by the Supreme Court of the United States. But in the meantime, Trump has said that he's willing to talk to Democrats regarding DACA. What he will ask in return, we don't know if it's going to be feasible, but at least he has said that he's willing to meet with Democrats to see if we can do something about the DACA.
Same thing. I don't think we're going to see that until we see it, right? I mean, there's a lot of speculation of what can suffer, but we expect for industries like the service industry or even agriculture or other industries to suffer if we start losing immigrants, or if immigrants decide to up and move to other parts of the country or to other countries. We're going to definitely see many industries hurting. And this can be, in the case of DACA recipients, for a lot of people who are under deferred action, which the program is also now at risk or has been at risk for some time. We're not only seeing service industry folks, but teachers, a lot of hospital workers. So we could see a trickle-down effect, and a lot of these industries really be affected by deportation.
Well, Stephen, you and Rudy and myself, we've talked a lot about the 27% swing in Latino votes from Team Blue to Team Red in Texas. It seems to me here that the smart political play, because a lot of these dreamers have been here for years, if not decades, would be for the Trump administration to have some compassion here. Thoughts? Stephen?
I'll go.
Yeah. No. You're not going to be able to just go scorched earth on every topic, especially on certain topics that are as sensitive as the border. Now, has the electorate shown that they have more desire to be more aggressive on the border? Sure. That's why President Trump is back in office, because Democrats kind of waited till the clock ran out to get tough on the border or talk about a real plan on the border that Republicans would be willing to go back and forth with and push forward. And so, yeah, I don't think it's going to be as brash as some people think, because Hispanic voters helped Trump get in office.
Yeah, Rudy, I mean, dreamers have been here for a while. They're married, they're part of communities, they're in jobs, and there could be some Latino voter backlash on that.
Yeah, Greg, and this was the great missed opportunity of Trump's first administration. This is easy. This is an easy get. This is an easy negotiating bargaining chip. Hate to call the Dreamers a bargaining chip, but they are, and that's how they should be viewed as such, to get them their pathway to citizenship. These are kids who have gone through high school. These are kids who have gone through college. And with those degrees, that's a lot more work than what you're going through the natural immigration process. So why not open the door for these individuals who have graduated from high school, the kids who graduated from colleges? Low-hanging fruit. The problem is that the advocates for that group have been so angry against Trump, they refuse to even sit down at the negotiating table to work with him and say, we'll give up this if you give us the Dreamers. And Trump considers himself to be the great negotiator. Why not? And so this is going to be a true test for the advocates for the Dreamers. Will they sit down at the table with Trump and his people and say, we will do this, the border wall, or extra language in regards to immigration, but you've got to give us the Dreamers? I guarantee you that negotiation could happen.
Have you guys spoken to any advocates of DACA recipients and how they're preparing for this administration moving forward?
The folks here in Austin are
Texas.
Wait and see.
Go ahead, Rudy. Rudy.
I was going to say, Stephen, the folks here in Austin are in a wait and see mode. Something that you mentioned earlier, Stephen. They're very interested in seeing what kind of verbiage is going to come out of Washington. The one concern that I have is what I just mentioned: the advocates digging in and not willing to negotiate. What are you hearing up there, Stephen?
Yeah, North Texas is more of a wait and see as well. And I think everyone is waiting to see if, Trump is going to say one thing and then do another, similar to what he did in his first term in office, where we're going to build the wall, Mexico is going to pay for it. Mexico didn't pay for it. And so we'll have to wait and see. I know some colleges, depending on their offices, sent certain messages to international students. But again, we're just hurry up and wait.
Hurry up and wait. All right, so now let's listen to some more sound bites here from an immigration attorney and Fiel from the Houston areas. Again, much of the same. Wait and see.
If you have a deportation order, it's time to talk to an immigration lawyer immediately. If you have a criminal conviction in your record, it's time to talk to an immigration lawyer. And even if you're not in any of those categories and you're illegally in the country, this is the right time to talk with an expert in immigration that can tell you how to regularize your status and how to be legal in the United States. There's many ways. Many people don't know how to do it. Some will take some time, some will not, but there's always options.
So we are waiting. We are telling people what they can prepare for. We are telling people that if they haven't done a citizenship for their kids or anything like that, that right now it's a good time to do it. Or if they haven't done, dual nationality for their kids, if they're able to do so, like countries like Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, then they should also process that. So there's a lot of things that we are getting our community ready for and preparing our community for the just in case.
Stephen Dowell, you hear anything in Dallas about self-deportation? We're hearing it anecdotally here.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about self-deportation. Now, I guarantee you there are conversations going on in different households and around the state and around the country about how to proceed. And these executive orders that we are waiting on may speed up the process or decision for some people, or some people may just say, hey, come and get me if you can.
And you know, Rudy, like you mentioned before, we were talking about Congress up there. You know, Republicans have control, all three branches right now. But being that this issue of immigration was such a winner for the Republican Party, do you see Democrats being a little bit willing to give on some of these issues, or we can focus on DACA or even some of these programs moving forward?
Greg and Stephen and I have talked about this, and in regards to the Democrats, what are they going to do? Are they going to pivot away from the extreme measures that they that have gotten them to the situation that they're in right now, or will they be willing to basically say, all right, let's talk and have negotiations? And again, 4 years from now, if we're still talking about the Dreamers and DACA, it will be the greatest misstep, not by the Republicans, but by the Democrats, of not helping those individuals. This is that one big opportunity. And gosh, right now, I think people, the Democrats here in the Austin area are just dug in and still a little shell-shocked. And we'll see what's going to happen next if they're going to make a pivot.
Stephen, you think that the ag associations, the meat packers, the construction industry, that they're getting a game plan to try and lobby the Trump administration to some degree?
Oh yeah, and you know, depending on what type of Trump supporter you are, people are saying one thing publicly, but scrambling behind the scenes, because those industries that you mentioned, they are directly impacted by the very thing that some of them who voted for President Trump support. Is saying one thing and doing another thing is going to make the biggest difference in this. And President Trump knows deep down that certain industries that will break our country if it's impacted like this will greatly impact the economy. And so, you know, he's a politician, he's a businessman. We'll have to see what the wording looks like.
All right,
I think that's a red herring, guys. I think that's a whole red herring. The whole industry is going to collapse if we deport these people. Red herring. Mark my words.
All right, Rudy, thanks. All right, now let's talk about family separation a bit here. We're going to listen to this soundbite.
For a lot of families, this is going to mean family separation. This is going to mean, or the possible deportation of U.S. citizens. And by that, I mean the majority of people that could be deported live in mixed status families, meaning that they themselves may be undocumented, but they may have children or spouses who are U.S. citizens. And if you deport the parents, then what are the kids to do? You don't expect 5, 6-year-olds. You don't expect, preteens to be living here on themselves. They're going to have to go with their parents. And therefore, it could be a default deportation for even U.S. citizens.
You know, as I mentioned earlier, one of the extraordinary developments in this presidential election was the massive swing of Latino votes for Donald Trump, particularly here in Texas, where the new president captured 55% of the Hispanic vote.
That is a heck of a swing, and that's why we sent our Jonathan Mejia down there to the border, to Eagle Pass, to talk to some of the folks down there, Jonathan, specifically in Hidalgo County.
Yes, Hidalgo County, which is a part of the Rio Grande Valley border sector. So we were just hearing about family separation. Now, that is one thing that President Donald Trump mentioned during his campaigns. And as I was speaking with residents who live here in the border towns, that was one of the things they did not agree with. But overall, they believe that President Trump was the right pick, and it's why they say they are proud supporters of Latinos for Trump. As far back as the 1994 general election in the state of Texas, Hidalgo County has voted for the Democratic nominee. But 30 years later, there was a change. The county turned red. A big part of that was for Donald Trump's promises during his campaign rallies. He sent a strong message to border communities in the entire country that the U.S. Mexico border would see changes on day one of his presidency if elected. For those living in the border security and immigration were top of mind when heading to the voting polls.
Yes, sir. It was a concern. I spoke to some of our neighbors, and they told me sometimes they cross from Mexico running, and they don't bother you and then nothing. They just run across your yard and home and grab any water or be hiding there behind AC units, but it's pretty calm right now.
Arturo Viveros has been living in Hidalgo County for about 4 years. He works for the county, he's married and has kids, so having the border just steps away from his backyard made him think twice about what his next 4 years could look like. Do you have any hope that with this new administration things can change at the border?
Yes, sir. I do have some hope, maybe a little bit more of protections. I ride the bike along the border wall, and I've seen some more movement, more National Guard, Border Patrol, people working in the wall. It's getting protected a little bit more.
This new administration, you voted for President Trump. What are your thoughts on his take on immigration? He talks about mass deportation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree totally on that. I mean, if you're here legally to work, I mean, I don't have any problem. But if you're here just walking around asking for money and doing things that you're not supposed to, I mean, we got news all over the place, Dallas, up north, having people taking advantage of that. I mean, just get to work, get your papers right, and we'll be good to go.
Hidalgo County is part of the Rio Grande Valley border sector. It was once the hot spot, but currently the sector has been relatively quiet. But that wasn't the case in the past.
Right now, no people. Well, 3 years before, 4 years before, a lot of people, every day, every night.
Miguel Coronado is 69 years old. He's been living in Hidalgo County for 40 years. He's his mother's primary caregiver. She's 97 years old, so when he would see migrants on his property, he was concerned.
Yo sentía miedo, afraid.
¿Le daba miedo?
No.
¿Por qué?
Well, hay gente que es mala. Hay gente que es buena.
That was the sentiment for most neighbors I spoke with within the area. And for Santos Jimenez, who has been living in the county for more than 50 years, he can remember vividly what it was like just a couple of years before.
We were scared because people were crossing the fences and running all over and hiding. You see the dogs barking. You go outside, and all of a sudden you see people hiding like behind the cars, or behind the, like right here, the trailer, or behind objects. You were scared, like you were like, hey, what's going on? And they just start running.
So he took matters into his own hands and installed the fence in his backyard that serves as another barrier for illegal migrants.
That's the wall. That's the government wall right there. They cross, and this prevents them from coming over.
For Viveros, Coronado, and Jimenez, they have hope in the incoming Trump administration and agree with some of his policies, such as mass deportations. When it comes to ending birthright citizenship,
well, on that one, I'm kind of 50-50. My parents are Mexicans, but they're legally here now. But it's 50-50, you know. If you're paying taxes, that's all he wants, you know, do the right things and just be here.
Well, I'm against that because they gonna be a lot of sentimental issues.
and you mentioned it, sentimental issues where families will be separated, and he said that if families don't want to be separated, then they all can just be deported. Your thoughts on that?
No, I'm against that.
All right, Jonathan, final thoughts before we wrap up the show here, just on your coverage overall the last couple of days.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that people voted for change, and we're starting to see it today with executive orders signed, and we'll see what the rest of the 4 years will look like under this new Trump administration.
All right, Jonathan Mejia doing some great work down there for us in Eagle Pass. We'll check back with him throughout the next 4 years. We'll be down there.
Absolutely. Rudy, you saw what happened in the Rio Grande Valley. It went red for the first time in history. You and Stephen and I, we watch the political dynamics. Do you anticipate that some Dems in the Rio Grande Valley will be attracted?
Am I good? Can I step away?
Will be attracted to the Republican Party?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's already happening. I think that there's an immense frustration. You go down there in the RGV and you look at the neighborhoods that are along the border, and homes have 20 15-foot tall fences wrapped around the homes to protect their homes. People are frustrated. They want change. The big question for me is that will this be 4 years of obstruction, or will it be 4 years of negotiation? That's the big question.
And Stephen, how could Democrats miss such a glaring issue when it comes to the border and not really seeming to do enough under the Biden administration?
Right. I mean, Democrats went all in on abortion, and they thought that with more women voting, more people from a certain generation possibly turning out with a female candidate at the top of the ballot, they thought that was their, I don't want to say Hail Mary, they thought that was just a good playbook, and it turned out to not be one. And too last minute, some Democrats started talking about the border more. And so they have to have a come to Jesus moment. They have to regroup nationwide, but specifically here in Texas, because things are not trending in a great direction for them.
Stephen Dow, Rudy Koski, thank you so much for great insight here on Border Watch.
Absolutely.
And the border and immigration, like we said, it's going to be a story we're going to have to continue to cover here for the next 4 years. And we will keep you updated on what exactly is happening as it is happening in every single way. You can sign up for Jonathan Mejia's weekly Border Watch newsletter by clicking on that QR code right there on your screen.
And our Texas The Issue Is team will stay on top of the issue. You can see Rudy, Stephen, and myself each Sunday night at 9:45 on Fox 26 and on our Fox local free app. That's where you can rewatch this special and watch all of our exclusive border coverage. Thanks for joining us.